News!
Okay, tomorrow we're going to be seeing Amanda Serrano, the featherweight division's only unified champion, take on Denmark's own reigning titleist, IBF champion Sarah Mahfoud. Unbeaten Sarah Mahfoud, who sports a professional record of 11 wins, no losses, and no draws.
3 knockouts.
To Amanda Serrano, who sports a professional record of 42 wins, 2 losses, 1 draw, with 30 knockouts.
Needless to say that experience is vastly on Amanda Serrano's side.
For this reason, I want to give Sarah Mahfoud a lot of credit for deciding to take on this fight, for deciding to behave like a champion and a fighter who is a fighter. The deck is very much stacked against Sarah Mahfoud in this thing. There's nothing she does better than Amanda Serrano. There really isn't. Doesn't have a better jab than Amanda. Isn't quicker to draw, quicker to counter than Amanda. Not as strong a puncher. Not as good in the pocket. Doesn't have better feet than Amanda. She's certainly not as experienced as Amanda. Nowhere near. Sarah Mahfoud, God bless her, really is outgunned in most every department when it comes to this fight, but it's for this reason I give her a lot of credit. She's deciding to go through with it anyway. Now, maybe she understands that there's no shame in losing to a world-class fighter and a quality operator like an Amanda Serrano. There's no shame in that. If you lose this thing tomorrow, it's really not the end of the world. At least you can say you shared the ring with somebody like Amanda. There's no shame in losing to somebody like that, but rest assured, I do think Sarah Mahfoud, I do think she's going to lose tomorrow. In fact, I think she's going to get stopped. Sarah Mahfoud, who saw action earlier this year in April against Nina Menke, a southpaw.
Same way that Amanda Serrano's a southpaw.
I mean, that's one thing that Nina Menke and Amanda Serrano have in common as fighters, but it's probably the only thing they have in common, because Nina Menke is really a far cry from what Sarah will be facing in Amanda Serrano. Amanda Serrano, the southpaw, to Sarah Mahfoud, who is the orthodox fighter. Shoots the orthodox jab with the left hand in order to set up the big right hand. She's got a decent enough 1-2.
Decent jab, decent straight, but not the most defensible.
There is a hole there that Amanda can exploit. Sarah Mahfoud's punches aren't quite compact enough to where when she lets her hands go, they're still defensible. And you'll notice that she often loses form
outside of the straight 1-2. When she's trying to put punches together,
it's a little bit too wild, too scrappy.
She's flailing her arms about, chin in the air.
Her body's exposed. I don't think she protects it well enough. I don't think she's accustomed to fighting someone that might look to go there.
And it just so happens that Amanda Serrano regularly goes there. Amanda Serrano is quite an accomplished body puncher.
Creates a situation to where if Sarah Mahfoud feels froggy, tries to leap, feels froggy, shoots the straight 1-2, steps into it, tries to follow up, she could end up eating a series of body shots the same way that Daniela Bermudez ended up eating a series of body shots that sent her to the canvas.
I just don't think Sarah Mahfoud protects herself well enough for this assignment.
Doesn't protect herself well enough upstairs. I think that chin is a little bit too exposed. Doesn't keep it tucked. Doesn't protect herself well enough downstairs.
Punches aren't defensible when she lets her hands go and her body's exposed.
There's a lot here that Amanda can exploit if Sarah Mahfoud stays in character and fights the fight the way she's been fighting every other fight leading up to this point. If Sarah Mahfoud tries to be more of a back foot and lateral movement kind of fighter, using the ring and using those legs to offset Amanda's power, well, then she's under threat of Amanda Serrano outworking her. It's what we saw in the Yamileth Mercado fight. Yamileth Mercado, who's normally a come-forward, aggressive volume puncher, with Amanda, she decided to be more of a boxer, more of a mover. And while that did buy her time, she still lost the fight, still lost wide on the cards as Amanda Serrano was laying into her and outworking her. Lest we forget, Amanda Serrano's not just an accomplished boxer, she's a volume puncher. She's aggressive.
Sarah Mahfoud ain't got the tools for this assignment. She's nowhere near experienced enough and nowhere near as put together as Amanda Serrano is.
She may be a champion and a brave one, but she's not a complete fighter.
I admire her moxie, her courage, taking on this fight when she is so obviously overmatched.
But I don't believe this is going to end well for her. I don't believe this is going to end well for Sarah Mahfoud. I have Amanda Serrano stopping Sarah Mahfoud tomorrow on the undercard of Joyce versus Joseph Parker and adding yet another title to her collection,
leaving her with just one more title to collect before she can call herself this division's undisputed champion.
Amanda Serrano, by way of knockout, is the pick. We then come to the main event of that same card. The heavyweight clash between Joe Joyce and Joseph Parker. 37-year-old Joe Joyce, unbeaten, sporting a professional record of 14 wins, no losses, and no draws, to Joseph Parker, the former champion, sporting a professional record of 30 wins, 2 losses with no draws.
He's 7 years younger than Smoking Joe Joyce.
And a lot more experienced as a professional. Joseph Parker is a former champion, having shared the ring with the likes of Carlos Takam and Andy Ruiz, Anthony Joshua, Dillian White, Derek Chisora 2 times, Junior Fa, then unbeaten Junior Fa. Joseph Parker, he's been around the block, and experience, at least as a professional, it really is on his side. But I'm not going with Joseph to win this thing. I am going with Smoking Joe Joyce.
I made up my mind about this thing a long time ago. Joseph Parker just doesn't show enough spite.
Enough mean streak to convince me that he can secure the W against Joe Juggernaut Joyce, who really does live up to his namesake. He is a juggernaut. He is relentless. He doesn't have the best defense, doesn't have the fastest hands or the fastest feet.
But he's relentless, and he's not going to stop coming after you.
A physically imposing pressure fighter with a great gas tank, good amateur background, and what he's trying to prove now is that he's on the level, world level. If he beats Joseph Parker, I think he will have proven just that. Joseph Parker, who comparatively is the smaller fighter in terms of height and reach.
I don't think he can hold Joe Joyce back, I don't.
There's been a lot of talk about the improvements to Joseph Parker since having enlisted the aid of Andy Lee ahead of what was the Derek Chisora fight. And while it is true, Joseph Parker looked better in the second Chisora fight than he did in the first one when he was still being trained by Kevin Barry.
Long-time trainer Kevin Barry.
Well, I do agree with the contention that Joseph Parker does look to have improved since enlisting the aid of Andy Lee. Need I remind you that he needed to show those improvements just to get one decisive victory over Derek Chisora. One decisive win. You needed 2 fights with that guy to decisively beat him, because I don't think Joseph really earned the W in the first fight. I don't think he deserved that victory, even though the judges gave it to him.
Needed 2 fights with that guy to get 1 decisive win. That's what I see.
And while Andy Lee may have been an improvement to Joseph Parker's corner comparatively, I like the work from Ismael Salas.
El profesor.
Comparatively, I think Joe Joyce has the stronger corner. Ismael Salas has worked with a wide variety of fighters, anybody from Joe Joyce to Kazuto Ioka to Hector Garcia.
The guy who put that beating on Chris Colbert down there at 130 pounds.
I think Joe's got the stronger corner. I think Joe is going to prove to be too much for Joseph Parker. Joseph Parker, who's quite formidable mid-range to inside.
He can be in bursts, in spots.
But he's not consistent. And that is what's been consistent with Joseph Parker, his inconsistencies. That he's got the tools, he's got the talent, he's got the ingredients, but he lacks the spite, lacks the mean streak.
So maybe he gets off a couple of eye-catching shots, couple of eye-catching right hands, because Joe Joyce really ain't got the best defense.
And he does, and I didn't forget how he looked in the Bryant Jennings fight or the Carlos Takam fight.
Yeah, maybe Joe Boxer Parker lands a couple of big shots as Joe Joyce is barreling forward. But Daniel Dubois landed a couple of big shots as Joe Joyce was barreling forward.
It didn't stop him from barreling forward. He kept coming after him. I believe that's what we're going to see tomorrow when it comes to Joe Joyce and Joseph Parker. I believe that Joseph Parker might get off to a good start while he's fresh and the damage has not yet set in, but I feel like Joe Joyce is going to wear him out. Joe Joyce, who, despite being 37 years old, he's got a great gas tank for a guy that size and a guy that age.
Good power, too.
And a good work rate. Of the two, I'd have to say that Joe Joyce is the slightly more prolific puncher. You know, Joseph Parker, he only wants to mix it up in spots.
Not as consistent as Joe Joyce.
Joseph Parker, he's a solid fighter. I think he's proven that he's a solid fighter. I think he's proven that, but I haven't forgotten, this is a guy who was floored by Dillian White. Floored by Derek Chisora.
I think Joe Joyce could do a little better than that.
Having last fought earlier this year against Christian Hammer, he's got no cobwebs or ring rust that he needs to shake off. I feel we'll see a sharper Joe Joyce than the one we saw.
Than the one we saw back in July.
And I feel like Ismael Salas and Joe Joyce's strategy ahead of this Joseph Parker fight is to overwhelm the guy, force him to throw, force him to fight, force him into exchanges where you can overwhelm him. Because Joseph Parker,
you see, he's the naturally smaller guy in this.
Joe Joyce has got him beat in terms of height and reach. He's got the longer wingspan, so when he shoots that jab from the outside coming in and steps into it...
Same jab he busted up Daniel Dubois' eye with.
Joe Boxer Parker's either going to cover up to protect himself from that jab or waste. He's going to open up, and when he opens up, that's going to give Joe Joyce more opportunities to hit him with even bigger shots, big punches.
Don't forget that Joe Joyce isn't afraid to take one in order to give one.
Joe Joyce is relentless, and because of this, I envision a situation to where Joseph Parker will look all right at the start, get off a couple of hard shots and some counters, but the pace is going to get to him.
The pace is what's going to catch up to him because Joe Joyce isn't going to lay off. He's going to keep coming after him, forcing him to fight.
Forcing him to do something which will thereby drain his energy reserves. I wouldn't be at all surprised to see Joe Joyce stop Joseph Parker tomorrow, but it could easily end up being Joe Joyce outworking Joseph and winning a points decision. In any event, I do have Joe Joyce winning tomorrow's fight. I just don't think Joseph Parker has enough mean streak to really keep this guy off and make it decisive. I think Joe Joyce, if he doesn't stop Joseph Parker, at minimum, he will outwork him. So I am going with Joe Joyce.
The guys that Canelo has fought in the super middleweight division are, to be honest, let's be honest, they have no fucking power. They're all trash. That's why they don't give them nothing.
Wait a minute. If the unbeaten champions that Canelo Alvarez fought at super middleweight to become an undisputed champion, if all those guys are trash, what would you call the guys that you've been fighting, David?
They can't back Canelo up. That's why with Golovkin, he has the power. He had the power to back Canelo up.
And what guys have you been fighting that could have backed you up, David? Kyron Davis, Ronald Ellis, David Lemieux.
If the guys Canelo's been fighting are trash, what are the guys you're fighting? World beaters?
When he fought, what's his name? Caleb Plant. Caleb Plant had no power.
Caleb Plant? You want to talk about Caleb Plant? Caleb Plant would easily be the best name on your entire resume, your entire CV.
You want to talk about Caleb Plant? Let's talk about Caleb Plant.
Now, Caleb Plant just posted on his social medias that you said that David Benavidez versus Caleb Plant needs to take more time. Why?
Look, this business is for two reasons. Make money and more money. Caleb Plant, or David Benavidez, he need another two good fights, and then he can go to be a pay-per-view.
The obvious answer fans would say, well, we want the best fight and the best. We're tired of paying for C versus D. We want A versus A.
Well, you have two A's, no
That's
doubt.
what I mean, two A's and David Benavidez and Caleb Plant.
To see two A fighters, you need to pay. You cannot be for free. So I believe in two more fights, maybe next year, early next year or spring, it can be a unification.
According to David Benavidez, Caleb Plant had no power.
So you're telling me that your promoter dragged his feet in 2020? He dragged his feet
When Caleb was a champion and you were a champion, your promoter dragged his feet and delayed that unification match against the guy.
against the guy with no power?
Billy Joe Sanders had no power. The other guy that he won the first belt from, I can't remember his name, the tall one.
You know that every single one of these guys you're mentioning is better than the guys that you've been fighting? Billy Joe Saunders beat David Lemieux before you did.
The first belt he won at 168.
Callum Smith.
You're telling me Callum Smith is trash. You're telling me Callum Smith can't punch. Callum Smith is up there at 175 pounds, knocking everything out. Everything in front of him.
He's knocking out guys that have never been knocked out. He knocked out Lennon Castillo. He knocked out Matthew Bowder-Lee.
Meanwhile, you're keeping busy with Gennady and Billy's sloppy seconds.
Lemieux!
The only one that was actually a really good champion that he beat was Callum Smith, and I give him his respect for that. But the other guys, they have no power. So
How the hell did Canelo Alvarez end up unifying with Callum Smith before you did when you were there before him?
Politics.
Politics of boxing. All right. Well, what about Caleb?
Caleb Plant, or David Benavidez, he need another two good fights, and then he can go.
I feel like once you don't have any power and Canelo doesn't respect your power and he just walks through it, there's going to be a problem. But
Well, Canelo's fought more power punchers than you have, David. He fought Gennady Golovkin. He fought Callum Smith. He fought Dmitry Bivol and Sergey Kovalev at light heavyweight. Who have you fought again?
I mean, you could tell me, I have 26 fights, 23 knockouts. So I definitely have the power, definitely have the speed and the jab too to keep him out and be really effective against him.
There's no way you tell the story, the whole story, without acknowledging that David Benavidez painted himself into a corner, and if he's irrelevant now, at least to Canelo, it's really his own fault.
Nobody told you to eat your way out of a belt.
Yeah. I seen yesterday you posted a meme about Canelo. Do you think it's getting to the head that your name is being mentioned a lot now? You know,
definitely tell that's getting to him. You know how he ended the press conference just because somebody brought my name up.
Well, how would you feel if you were a 4-division champion, 2-time Ring Magazine, 2-time Lineal,
Pound for pound.
unified and undisputed champion, so they could prop up some kid that hasn't fought anybody?
Some kid who swerved Caleb Plant in 2020.
Wouldn't you be frustrated?
I mean, and I know it's getting to his head. You know, he's mad about that, but you know what, bro? Like, I earned my spot. You know, I've been #1 in the WBC.
Well, what about all those champions you just trashed? All those guys? Didn't they earn their spot?
Forgive me that I don't think Caleb and Billy are pieces of trash because you beat David Lemieux.
For like 4 fights now, you know, and I just want what the position that they promised me. You know, they said win this WBC title, eliminator, you'll fight Canelo next. I fought 2 of them. Then they say win the WBC interim title, you'll fight Canelo next. Now I won the WBC title. I mean, the people that are talking shit are saying this and that about, oh, he needs to earn a spot, this and that. What do you think the ranking system is for?
The ranking system is for the belts, and what do you think the belts are for? You know the belts. You used to have a belt before you
cheeseburgered your way out of one.
If there's no ranking system and I'm #1 in the WBC, then what the fuck does that mean? You know, I think the people that just are talking and they don't know what the fuck they're talking about, they should just stay quiet.
Oh, David, I know exactly what I'm talking about. You had the same opportunity that Canelo had to fight Caleb Plant and take his belt before Canelo had it. And it's your own promoter that dragged his feet when it came to that.
You let Canelo Alvarez do all the dirty work that you should have done. You let him unify this entire division.
Well, you were sniffing and eating your way out of world titles, and now what do you want? You want sympathy?
He contradicts himself because he says shit.
Aren't you contradicting yourself calling the champions that he beat trash when you had the opportunity to take out that trash before he did?
Well, when Mayweather gave him the opportunity, he wasn't really nobody either. I mean, yeah, he did have a belt, but...
Do you have a belt?
No, but he used to.
What happened to it?
Blew the weight and lost it on the scales.
You know, like it was in the same position as me.
No, he wasn't. He wasn't in the same position as you because he had a belt. You don't.
So in what way are you in the same position as he was?